I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display. This is war with the enemy. Think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is all.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Tactical Awareness. My name's Ash, and I will be joined today by my co-hosts Owen and Dan for another discussion about Infinity the Game. It is Season 1, Episode 31. We're on ITS14, and today we're going to be talking about social contract. The unspoken or spoken agreements between players to, I guess, like, get the most accurate outcome of a game, and what happens when it works, what happens when it goes wrong. So let's dive in, check in with the guys, and get this underway. All right, this is it. We have no plan until we have a plan. Now we have a plan, which means that we're going to talk about social contracts. And this is all going to come about because it's a topic that, like, it comes up a lot. It comes up a lot when we run events. It comes up a lot in Infinity in general when you give new players advice. And then the opposite comes up every once in a while when you're playing other games, and it really throws it up in lights. So we'll save the punchline to that one. But today we're going to talk about why I think Infinity is probably one of the games that I've had the hardest time having a bad game at. And it's like a game that I regret. I don't like the person I played against, or I didn't have a good time. And it tends to be because it filters out people through its need for like a really strong social contract. So I'm going to define that a little bit more later. But that's the topic for tonight. I am joined by, of course, Owen and Dan. Say hi, everybody.
Hello.
And then Owen. Owen also says hi. Owen also says hi. And we are catching up with what each of us did this week, what we've been working on, and then we're going to take some questions from the mailbag before we launch into our On a Soapbox, shaking our fists at clouds. So what have you been up to, Dan? I
just bought the box with the Sarko and the Seku droid.
Oh, you're on my level now. How do you feel? It's so good.
I wanted to buy 2 boxes, but then they're like, we only have one. I'm like, what the?
You're literally costing yourselves money. Do you see how stupid you look right now?
You fools.
These fools order 2 of everything. Why? Why would you do this? Defeated by your own hubris.
Now, luckily, oftentimes when a Sarko reveals himself, he dies. And then I just have another camo marker, which will turn into the other Sarko. But I only need one model.
You can have 2 Sarkos in your list, but only have 1 Sarko model because you just assume that one is always going to be dead or camo.
In all fairness, that's what I did with my 5-day Lamy, having only 4-day Lamy with Panzerfests.
True. Also, in all fairness,
it was never addressed.
I don't think Dan's ever owned a Catherine show.
I did. I didn't. I've never actually put her on the table.
She's never actually seen the table, though. Yeah,
she's never been on the table.
She's either died or been someone else. Someone else chose someone else's face. Yeah. She total recalls it. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Are they already painted?
No.
Oh, come on! You're such a fast painter.
I was planning. I just got home. I'm literally cutting off all the flash right now.
All right. Oh, are you hobby right now? Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm glad we don't hobby during every one of these talks.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. You know what though? I like that. I have like scheduled hobby time. I built my Stigmaton last time, and I've just started like putting the basing and stuff, all the base coats down on my my new Oyuroi, which is making me happy. So it's true. It does just give us like 2 hours where we force ourselves to sit down and like get a bit of hobbying done and get excited about shit, which I think is cool. What have you been up to? And
wait, I have one more story.
Oh, you have more stories. Okay, sorry. Go on.
You played games.
I played a game. So I met this new guy, started posting in the chat. He was like, hey, I'm new. I want to get back to Infinity. And I was like, Owen and I jumped on it. We're like, yes, more Infinity. But anyways, I was able to meet him yesterday night at the game store. And I just set up like a little tiny game because he only had like maybe like 150 points of like 3 different factions. I mean,
right.
I had
like baby starters.
First edition.
Right.
But it was cool. He's like from Syria, ended up leaving because of the war. He was like, he's like, I didn't have too hard of a time like a lot of other people did, but it was like, whatever. But he ended up in Canada, and he seems like a really cool dude. and hopefully we'll play lots more Infinity together.
That's amazing. Look at you guys doing the Carlos's work. Bless Carlos on this most Carlos of days.
we played this just tiny like 150 point game, and I was like, I never bring the Omega. I'll bring the Omega just with the multi-rifle. And then I built him like a Dakini list.
For your nice
SFS
friendly game with an
like,
Omega, you jerk.
Super. He like comes up and I just like crit him and I kill him. And then it was like so many dice offs of less like, oh, you rolled a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 20. Well, I rolled a 5.
So sorry.
I beat you.
Nice. It's the game you played against Owen where Owen was trying to go easy on you and then you just exploded crits all over him. Sometimes your horseshoe just falls out of your ass and everything comes up, Dan.
Yeah. I don't need a social contract. I'm just lucky.
You're just kindly. You just have a nice demeanor and everyone thinks you mean well. So even when you're just exploding people mercilessly, they're having a good time.
Except in board games. Oh my gosh, everyone's so suspicious of me in board games.
Yeah,
I never pull anything off.
Because board game players are sociopaths. Let's be honest. Everybody knows that.
Dan's not to be trusted.
No one should trust anyone in board games. And I've seen Owen try and talk people into playing Twilight Imperium enough to know that that's the truth.
Dude, Owen's blatantly lying to them. And I'm like, guys, I think this is not a good idea. I don't trust you, Dan.
No.
What should I do?
Owen's either blatantly lying or he's telling the God's honest truth in a way that makes everyone think he's lying. That's actually his superpower, is when he actually tells the truth, but he tells it in such a way that everyone mistrusts it completely.
Except that everyone still does
he
what he says.
inceptions them.
It's really annoying.
Dan got really mad after one of our games.
I was like, he's like, oh, I didn't think Owen was going to do that. I was like, really? After he betrayed you twice and then he told you to do something and you did it again?
Dan's the frog that keeps carrying the scorpion across the river just over and over again. It's just like, why do I keep trusting you? And I was just like, I told you I was a scorpion. Like, this is how this works.
No, I never trust Owen, but other people do. And I'm like, guys, you're an idiot. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And then even after the fact, I'm like, I told you so. They're like, whatever. And then they do it again.
That's amazing. You're like multiple MIGs. You're like 2 cells down from Hannibal Lecter, but no one believes you.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous of his sociopathic nature to just, I don't know how.
It's not that. It's that he's charming. He's charming and direct, but also totally untrustworthy. Real Patrick Bateman energy. So that's awesome, man. For real though, that's really cool that you took the guy and took the time to actually play a small game against him and get him into the hobby community. I hope that keeps going.
Me too.
See, well, Owen keeps talking about playing Aleph now. So what have you been doing this week, Owen?
I built. Well, actually, in all fairness, I built all my Bakunin stuff. And
oh, that's right, you got the Bakunin box. That's sweet.
Yes, so I've built, assembled, primed, beginning the paint process on them, along with 2 Shakushes, along with 4 more Dakinis, and everything I need to play SSS. So that's kind of all I've been doing.
That's sweet.
Building models, ready to play games, that sort of thing.
Nice. That's fun. As long as it's fun just to build models. I have been doing a lot of that, but for another game, I've been playing The Last War. So I've been building all these like World War One, like horror models, making like barbed wire monsters and like mud ghouls, and watching Death Watch in 1917 like on repeat, getting my World War One stuff going on. But I did get my base tones down on the Oyuroi, and I built my Stigmaton, and I got a game in. I played Chris again, Chris Hash, who's come in twice now. He brought his Aleph last time, and this time around he brought his Cosmoflot. So I finally got to fight the bear. Oh man, the bear's so good. The bear's really, really good. We played Unmasking, and he had a really solid list. I had to fight through a Volkalak, that total immunity like heavy weapon guy who was terrifying. He had the Type 2 rifle, a Stranic outer core, and then the what's the last one called? Not the Straylock,
because it's usually Patchers.
No, he didn't have the Patchers yet. The Patchers just came out. He doesn't have them yet, but I love the Patchers. It's the one with the portable autocannon. And last minute, he changed his portable autocannon to be his lieutenant. And I played NCA, and I had an Ulan, and I was like, well, the Ulan's just going to walk around. He kept delaying off my Ulan's camo marker, and then I just fought those 2 guys in surprise attack. And obliterated him and put him in Lost Lieutenant his first turn.
Oh, no.
Because I was like, there's no way this guy with the auto as his lieutenant. And I wasn't softballing him or anything. I was just trying to get rid of anything that could hurt the Ulan. And so he was first turn in LOL. Although he, to his credit, actually did really well fighting his way out of it by command tokening an Ermendino, who didn't really care about being in Lost Lieutenant, right? Because he's impetuous and irregular. So he just ran forward, smoked one of the consoles, and managed to get a button push off, even though he's in Lost Lieutenant. With I think like his own orders +1 from that combat group. And then they killed one of he discovered and killed the other one because he command tokened another order and had the irregular on Usha, and she walked over and capped it. So he managed to get luckily it was not my HVT, like my designated target, but it was one of them. And then like that's all through the Lost Lieutenant turn. So he burned 2 command tokens to do it, but he still had like a really good play afterwards and managed to actually get a kill off, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, but then the Ulan did Ulan things. The funniest part was at the very end of the game, he had like maybe 6 or 7 orders left. The Ulan had to be pinned down in the middle of the table, and the Unknown Ranger went just like by himself, toe to toe with the Ulan, and just obliterated it over like 6 orders. It took him like 6 orders to do it, but he's just like, nope, I'm all done with this. This is killing my whole army. The Ulan's been killing everybody. And then like went over and just AP Spitfired it into the Stone Age. And the Ulan kept trying to, that time when like you got the 1 high dice, and if you rolled out like 15 to 17, you win the face to face, no matter what this guy does. And I just kept dropping like 1s and 2s. Like I dropped like 4 times in a row, I dropped like 1s and 2s. And he just kept chipping away at me. I think he got a wound each time. And over like 4 orders, I find that I was unconscious. And I still won the game 10-0, or 10-1, which was good. But the Ulan paid the price in the end, holding off the Unknown Ranger. That guy is so good for his points. He's incredible. So it's cool to finally play against Cosmoflot. I've got some folks coming in. I got a guy named Reuven, I think, coming in on Sunday from Germany to play some Infinity with me. I got Jordan coming in later in the week too, so I'm gonna get some more painting done. I'm gonna try and get some models done for my Bakunin and some models done for my JSA, so I can play them the next couple of days.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it for this week. So we're into the Q&A, into the mailbag section, and thanks all you listeners who put in new questions. We're stacked back up. I think we got like 6 or 7 now, so we got at least another week in advance. But yeah, go keep putting those in and filling this up, because this has been a fun feature, and I'm really enjoying having this part of the podcast. So again, same format as always. We'll take 3 questions each week. They have to be from different people, so keep adding a question a week. Don't like spam out like 7 questions at once, and we'll keep answering them. All right, question number 1 is for Owen. This is from Emperor Norton. And I picked up Assassins thanks to this podcast, and have done very well with them in various situations. Then I had to make a list to play against Steel Phalanx in a panic room, and I totally choked. How to make a list when you can't advance deploy the Sonic button for days and they both seem useless? So he's asking for your advice, Owen. How do you do a room mission, specifically panic room, against someone with like brawler pieces like Steel Phalanx when you're playing Assassins, and those like staple pieces don't really get to get used?
Double down. Take a Sunduk butt, just one maybe, with 4-day lobbies, and lean into shotguns. Lean into the light shotgun and the heavy shotguns that you have access to. You could go with Yara Haddad, because she can long range a lot of them as an MV speed piece. But otherwise, like turn 1, insert specialist, probably a Barid, because like if he's got Ajax or Achilles or Hector, you're gonna want, and also spotlight on those guys is just good in general. So like bring a little Barid with regular hacker instead of the normal killer hacker. Throw your pitcher in the room in some annoying corner for him, and you can start getting spotlights out to offset the mimetism. The real threat, in my opinion, is Atalanta, because it always is. But you can still bring 1 Fide who should beat Atalanta, because she doesn't have anything to do against him. And then yeah, just like turn 1, Barid opens the door, Sunduk Butt while Camel walks into the room and sits there with his double chain rifles, and then you coordinate order your Daylami Camel markers into the room with him. And then all of a sudden, the room is flooded with marker states who also have template weapons. And if he comes in with smoke, you can have your Daylamis just kind of body block for the Sunduk Butt. And also you have a hacker.
So it's like delivering the Sunduk Butt to the room so he can keep everybody else out.
And then if they don't have, like, if you're able in some way to snipe out his eclipse smoke, or just any smoke if you can, now all of a sudden he can just open up with the viral rifle when anyone comes near him.
I feel like Yazbir actually has a place in a room mission.
Or you go the other side and you go triple Asawira.
Yeah, or I was gonna say, or the Asawira, or you just brute force it, because
I think
Asawiras
that's
are
a
no
hard
joke.
one, because those guys are as good as the Asawira is, and like in straight up fights, they usually will lose against like even sizes.
They can berserk though. Most of those, like a lot of those steel phalanx pieces are lighter. You know what I mean? Whereas the Asawira can afford
the
to
thing
lose.
is, they're going to trade their life for that, because like a third of them have DA weapons or better.
Yeah.
Or half, even, I would even say. Maybe even be more than that. Like all of the Myrmidon officers and stuff have DAs.
Yeah, the thing with the Asawira though is they're basically immune to nanopulsars, which is this big steel phalanx staple. A lot of them have nanopulsars, and the Asawira being BTS-9 just walks around and is like, yeah, cute. Like just like walks
I just mean to say
nanopulsars.
that they don't have a failure state on their melee attacks. And so with Berserk, you're just trading wounds, and they're usually cheaper or as expensive as you are, and you don't have the fallback that they do.
Yeah, you got
So,
DAs too, though. You got like shotguns. I mean, the thing with the Asawiras is like they're cheap, like comparatively speaking, right? They're all sub 40 points. They're 30 to 40 points. So I think you get the 3 Asawiras and you still get something else.
A suppressing Bakhtar in the room would also be very difficult for them to dislodge because of his MSV. The big thing is you have to climb over the Atalanta hurdle, because she'll be in a way that'll mess you up. And then once you've gotten past that, just go kill his net rods with your Fide. Like if you die doing it, that's fine, because you'll just take out his orders, which he depends on. And then now all of a sudden you just trade lives. Like you put a jammer on the outside of the room.
Yeah, I was gonna say you drop jammers on the other side of the room so you can't come in.
Yep. Bring a baggage bot to reload your jammers, and then fill the room with just cheap Daylami, and like even like a little ghoulie team with the Bereaved with them, and let them just 2 dice or 2 shotgun blasts. He's gonna dodge into me. Okay, that's what the jammer's for.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. And then the Bereaved breaks out of the group and goes, I spotlight you, or I hack you in some way to immobilize you if you're another one of the for realsies one. Like you have so many out of line of fire fighty abilities, and also a bunch of guys that can be pylons backed up by throwaway pieces.
The question feels like a good reason to never get too comfortable with like your faction's strength, because it's not going to apply in every mission. Right. This is an example of like when Fides and Sonic Butts can't do what they're optimally designed to do. How do you pivot the list into things that are more optimal for that mission?
I don't know. Last time I played Armory, I had Hippolyta, Berserk, Sonic Butt die horribly and do no damage to the Sonic Butt.
Oh, Hippolyta. You're so hit or miss. I was
like, I get explosive close combat weapon. He is armor 4.
She's so good on paper, man, but I could never get her to work either.
I've had her work. She's great. Link her.
I know she's great.
Link her up.
I know. I have. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I just every time like the dice just shit the bed, and I haven't had a good experience with her yet. That's all. It's not her fault. It's not her fault at all.
Anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, question 2. This one's from Ryan. It's for everybody. It says the appeal to Infinity is having such a wide selection of models and units available for an army. But from hearing the analysis conducted, most of the units seem to be underperformers for general purposes, leaving only a handful of auto includes. Has Infinity reached a level of min-max gaming efficiency to influence model acquisition as right choices, or is there still room for less competitive armies to enjoy the game? Oh, wow. Okay, well, I hope that didn't come from us, because I don't think we've ever... I mean, there are some moments where we use hyperbolic, like, I don't know why you would take this over this statements, but I think we've always kind of prefaced everything with the fact that Infinity is very hard to, it's in 5-degree increments, right? Being better or worse is in 5-degree increments in this game. So having like tiers, the grade on which you're grading whether something's better than something else is so fine that I don't think there's a problem. And I think player skill is far more of an affecting factor than unit selection is. Because if unit selection was a factor, net lists would win Infinity games, and they don't. Players win Infinity games because you can have the best list in the universe and have no idea how it works and never win a single game with it. So I hope that's not our faction breakdowns giving that impression, because I'm pretty adamant that we're talking about how to get the best tools to play the game, but I think we're very clear about the fact that the player wins games of Infinity, not the list, because sometimes it'll just fall apart.
Ash is very defensive right now.
I think there's power creep. I think there are models that are better than other models.
Okay.
And that as time has gone on, more and more models are starting to outpace others. And that what was better at like a apples to oranges and like how you play them has started to fall into like some guys are just better, like point for point within their own factions.
Within their own faction, maybe, yes. They might outcompete
Right.
each other. I think the problem with that is the fact that the unit selection is so big now.
Right. No, and that's fine. Like it's that can be the cause of it, but that doesn't negate its existence. And that's where I think it is the case that some places are starting to show up where there are right choices and wrong choices. Like even in our conversation on the last episode over the like vanilla Yu Ching, there were a number of things that were in that super faction list that it's like you're not going to bring these. Like what's a good example if either of you remember, like the mech engineer, he's never coming. Like,
sure, but he is in some
engineers.
factions where it's just him, right? Where he is the best choice. It's if there's a monstructor, you're not going to use him because the monstructor is cheaper. But in the factions where you only get a mech engineer, you're going to take it because you need an engineer. Like so the reason I'm fundamentally disagreeing with that is because all of these models, for the most part, exist across several factions or appear in more than one place. It's about how do they fit into the matrix of where they are.
The comment is talking about the selection models available for an arc, not across the game.
Okay.
Like this is a debate internally within their own factions. And so like that's where I'm saying like in their own groups, like you're going to be hard pressed to justify bringing Zhuzhak regiment guys over in Zuyang Invincibles.
I completely disagree. Zhuzhaks are great. I don't agree with that at all. I completely disagree with you. They have access to different things.
I mean, they get breaker combis. The other side gets Tackaware Tinbot Firewall -6.
They also get heavy flamethrowers. They also get tin bots.
Okay. Theirs has a shotgun. Oh, I guess they have a breaker combi one. But I mean, like, I don't know. Fine. Maybe that's not the best example, but
Okay.
I know it's out there. Like, I know for sure that there's going to be models in here. Like, even your perspective on things like Sun Tzu, like, you don't think that you should bring him. Like, that was clear from the number of times it came up throughout that conversation that there are better lieutenant choices.
Sure, sometimes, yeah. For lieutenants, I think you bring Sun Tzu to fight if you're going to bring him. When we're talking about, it's all about context, is what I'm saying. And I'm not disagreeing that there are some models that need a glow up. Like I think there are absolutely models whose profiles could be updated. And I think that is the long job of Corvus Belli, right? Where they're constantly tweaking profiles, and they're not afraid to either, which I think is great. And sometimes they get it right. I think the recent example of the Observance, right, adding frenzy to all those all the whatchamacallits, the Sisters Battle, what are they called? The
Reverends.
To discount them a bit, made them way more attractive all of a sudden, right? Like they managed to tweak that. And then we had the Rodok thing where they didn't quite get it right. And I can't figure out what they're doing there, right? Like it's a huge matrix to stay on top of. I don't think it's gotten to the point though where there's better and worse choices. I think you can still, I think player skill still surmounts list rating, in my opinion.
I do think player skill surmounts it, but that doesn't change that I think there are, like, I mean, one of the things that's been like a running narrative throughout my time playing since I started playing again this past year has been there is a net list that exists. What models are in it changes, but the style is the same. Like 5-3-2 remote TR bot or TR piece, whatever your piece is called. Like that is so ubiquitous. Like you can go to an event and you will play that 2 out of 3 games. Like sometimes you'll play somebody who's an exception. They wanted to bring a tag or something, but you're going to play 5-man team, 3-man team. Maybe they're in the same group, maybe they're not. They're going to have 2 aggressive infiltrators or like peace traders, and like it pick your faction and it's the same thing. And then you start running into the same models again and again and again because there are models that fill that role with a 15 guy limit that they like best in slot. Like you're going to be pushed towards 25-point models.
And I think that's a really good observation actually, is that the 15 model limit may have more to do with the better worse profile thing, because you can't take chances as much when you only have 15 seats in the bus, if that makes sense.
And some guys who might have been dealt with easier because you could trade 2 or 3 dudes to fight them, you don't have those 2 or 3 dudes anymore. And
yeah,
so
because
all
you
of a
can't
sudden,
take that. There's not enough seats. Yeah.
like Atalanta is way scarier when you can't have a guy like, I'm going to just shoot a Panzerfaust, and if I die, oh well. But now if you do it, you're like, I really can't afford that guy to just throw his life away on a low shot. Right? Like, I have to coordinate a bunch of people, and that means I need to bring a bunch of people who are there in order to deal with this one model that might show up. And whereas before you could be like, well, okay, here comes the tag. What if we just like engaged him with 4 guys and we tried to beat him up? Or our 5-man link of garbage guys tries to fight because I have enough special forces elsewhere that can, I don't know.
What I'm agreeing with is I see how
I
see what you're saying, where the limited seats on the bus does make that argument more pointed, because you have a reason to try and get the best in each slot, and you can't spread it out and take more chances. What do you think, Dan? Break the tie.
A lot of people don't think the Link Sniper is very good, or you just don't really see them very much, or people talking about them. But I think it's amazing, and I've used it to really good effect. And on paper, the Epsilon or Nauf in 012 is a much better choice. But depending on playstyle
and skill,
I think the Lynx, and I think
hidden deployment's a very player skill dependent skill. Like, right, you need to, your player skill is going to come in when hidden deployment, I think, because there's a bunch of choices for you to make as a player to make that effective.
Yeah, and some luck involved, I guess, too. But it's I feel like with my play style of what I wanted that list to do, the other snipers just didn't cut it, because I wanted to play a defensive. If I'm afraid of someone who's going to go first and just destroy me or whatever, or I've been playing against McMurrow too much, or the Bears and they come around and kill me,
surprise.
Then I can guarantee to have my sniper be alive turn 1.
Yeah,
I think
it's a defensive thing.
I would to mitigate a bit of what I'm saying. I think the first part of this, has it gotten to the point where there are right choices? Yes. Is there still room to be less competitive and enjoy the game? Also, yes.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't an or question. It's a like, it is becoming the case that there are best in slots in a lot of factions. Like Atalanta should show up in most of your Steel Phalanx armies. Why? Well, it's just fucking really good. Like, it solves so many problems that you're going to run into.
And that comes and goes. Gazis were that in N3, right? Like,
right.
Gazis were auto includes.
Yeah, 100%. And so, like, balance can change that. But what in the current state, I do think there are right choices. I don't think there's very many wrong choices, but there are some. And I also would go so far as to say that, like, run double Magariba Guard. It has horrible flaws. Like, there's lots of ways to just kill it, but you'll enjoy the game.
And I mean, that's it. That's it. Like,
at the expense of everyone around you.
Well, I was gonna say, but here's it's true. But here's the thing is, and that right there, that like choosing to go in a weird skewy direction, the fact that can still exist and still like shock and awe people, I think, like the fact that you can still like kind of beat the bushes and surprise people is the strength of Infinity too, right? Where you can, there is still like an element of, there's so much chaos that there's going to be some weird outlier list that has its weaknesses, but also surprises the current like accepted meta.
Which is why I think this isn't an or question. I think both of these are true.
Yeah,
that's my.
So what do you think,
may
Dan?
not agree on the first, but
that's fair.
No, I think I get super bored when I play net lists. Like, it's just like, especially when I like play a mirror match and it's just the same fucking. I'm just like, no, it's like I have zero fun.
My McMurrow fights
I would rather lose a tournament trying to figure out my own list than win a tournament with someone else's list.
That's fair. Yeah, taking as many grot tanks as you can.
Oh yeah, it did well. It was a really good list.
I can't wait to hear about it. I can't wait to hear about it. All right, third question. This is from Taylor for everybody. Do you guys have any profiles that you love to take, despite maybe there's like a better alternative available?
Hey,
What would it take for you to make them as good as an alternative? What would it take to make them as good as the alternative? Well, the links is that's funny, Dan, because you already answered that question.
give it FSV. It
Yeah,
would cost too many points.
better give it FSV. Yeah,
It would cost
yeah,
way too
sure.
many points.
Give it a Ohotnik, so it's got no bad ranges.
Ooh.
The Ohotnik is an amazing gun. It's 0 to 8, and then it's +3 between 8 and 48 or 42 or whatever, I think. And then it's just 0 after that. It's literally like this like incredible super gun that only Ariadne gets apparently, because it's like a big game rifle.
I've never even heard about this gun.
The Ohotnik is basically the anti-antipode gun. It's the gun they developed to fight the werewolves because they live on a werewolf planet for some reason. It's very funny. Do I have any profiles that I love to take despite them being a bad alternative? Or maybe better alternatives better and available? I'm trying to think. What do you think, Owen?
Give the Shakouche climbing plus. I don't bring them though, so it doesn't quite fit.
You like Hector a lot.
I don't think Hector needs anything though. I think Hector's fine.
No, but the thing is, so like everybody loves Achilles. Achilles is mechanically powerful. A lot of people take Achilles. A lot of people didn't take Hector for a long time, but you would take Hector quite often.
They're
Right.
wrong.
But I don't think Hector needs. I think that's just a like. I don't agree that they're correct in that because I
Fair
think
enough.
Hector does have all the power already. I don't think he needs some. If they gave Hector like more,
BS14.
He would be too much.
BS14.
He's already good with 13 though. Like
That's
he
fair.
links, he has
Yeah.
all of the benefits there. Like if you gave him Mim 6 like the other Myrmidons, he'd be too strong, kind of thing. Like, you know who I do have someone who I'd like to have something, and it's Saladin in vanilla Hawk Islam.
Oh yeah, good example.
Because Saladin used to be great, and then everyone got Strategos, and Strategos got less good, and he got less good. So what would I give Saladin to try and make him more of a viable lieutenant? Either like a new tier of Strategos that does something beyond the normal because he's the epitome of like human strategy along with Sun Tzu, or just like double his stats, like make him a fighter as
Give
well as
him a heavy armor version. Like
here's
Sun
what
Tzu
it
has.
is. I got it. Inspiring. Drop Strategos.
That's a good idea. Inspiring
And give
presence.
him
Yeah.
give him inspiring presence.
Oh my god.
And you
could
will
imagine?
completely change how Hakazlan plays.
Yeah.
If you gave Saladin inspiring
Maybe don't
presence.
give it to vanilla. Give it to like one or both or like 2 of the sectorials. You like take him as like a
he's
leader
not in
sectorial.
any of the sectorials.
Really?
Yeah, he's
Oh,
not.
wow.
You can only bring him in vanilla. So maybe you add him to one of the sectorials and you do that. Like I don't know. The one that would probably be the most impacted and could use it the most would be QK.
That'd be cool. And he's the
if-
naval guy, right? Because he's on loan to O12. He's like the Navy
O12
guy.
liaison officer. So like if you put Saladin into QK and gave him inspiring, you would have a very interesting change.
That's a really interesting change to QK.
Because of
Imagine that, like
Riders?
that happens now and you've like called it.
Yeah. Well, that's why you don't give it to vanilla because
yeah.
Coom Riders, Daylami, like
Oh my god, that's what
there's too many of them.
Yeah, it just instantly would break Hakaslan. You couldn't do it. There's no way.
That said, with 15 model caps, I don't actually know if that is the end of the world. You end up just playing like Caledonia without the links.
Yeah, it's true, but you can still go Maggie Rafik, right, as like your core, and then just like pile orders on top of it and take like I don't know. You're right though. It would just give your orders like a super huge amount of efficiency.
You'd have a really interesting efficiency there that you could start bringing things like Toregs and Shujays who don't show up a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, because you can afford all
they
these regular orders.
They hit that 30 points, which puts them too expensive. So you have to like reduce down to like Al Hawaz and Farzan.
The ghoulies would all go home.
Hanzakuts.
Every ghoulie would go home, and the hitting pieces would get more expensive.
But like getting Bashi bazooks with regular, getting Hanzakuts, potentially Coom Riders. But like if I wanted to make Saladin, who I really like and I still try and use when I play vanilla, be good, he needs something more. And I think inspiring presence would be a neat one. Maybe not in vanilla, but toss him in somewhere else.
In vanilla 012, he just seems horrible as well. So
In O12, it's even worse because they have Hector, who's just him again, but better.
Yeah, there's no reason to take him on 12.
Wait, no, yeah, he's in
No.
Hector's.
No, no.
And you have the Alpha, who also is him, but better.
So here's the thing. Oh yeah, he is in Star Armada, but he's also in base O12, where you have the Alpha or you have Hector.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's only got Strategos level 1 in O12. For some reason.
Puts him the same as the one in Hawk's, or sorry, the Alpha. So even less reason to bring him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's
my answer to that question.
That's a good answer. I liked it. Who do I still love to use despite him only being like decidedly okay? That's a good question. Probably I'd say probably I'll go with military orders just to pick a different faction from the two of you. And I'm gonna say Mendoza. I love Mendoza. And like there's lots of reasons to like Mendoza. He's a really powerful hitting piece. He has like a ton of like staying power, like his core stats are off the charts, and he has fire on all of his weapons, right? Like he can have like a multi-rifle +1 damage that's continuous damage, and grenades that are continuous damage, and a DA close combat weapon that's continuous damage. Like it's bananas. But he's 57 points, and he has no like fire team option, so he's always off by himself. I've never had him survive. I don't know what it is about him. He's just very expensive.
I played against him once, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god, it's so scary!" Oh, never mind, he died. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I maybe he's just an unlucky piece because on paper he looks amazing, but he's like more expensive than Joan, right? Like he's 57 points. He's 12 points more than her, and on paper he's horrifying. Like he's like a tiny tag with mim -6. And continues damage on all of his guns and dodges on 16s and dodges an extra, and he can berserk. Like he has so much like just raw stat power, and for whatever reason he just doesn't land. And I think maybe it's just because everything's so expensive around him, right? Because you're playing military orders. I think if you gave him tactical awareness, if you gave him an extra order, and there's literally no tactical awareness in this entire faction, which blows my mind. Like I don't know.
One day we will talk about military orders.
Yeah, we will talk about military orders because Owen and I both love them. We both play them, and
I don't play them anymore. I haven't played them in quite some time. I
know,
played them like twice when I came back to it.
Yeah.
I was like, what have you done to my boy?
I know
you massacred him.
You massacred my boy. You gave him dart and nothing else.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I love Mendoza. I love the miniature. I love the story for him. I love like his core stat line. I think if you gave him maybe give him NCO. Maybe instead of tackle, we could just give him NCO because you have access to extra lieutenant orders in this faction pretty easily. I don't know. I love that model though. And I love Konstantinos too. Although Konstantinos is also just he's not very interesting compared to how it used to be.
The scale up of armor on newer guys has hurt his. I only have a
combi rifle, yeah, and an assault pistol. He's good at hunting little dudes, but he can't really brawl anymore.
He can kind of solve problems if you play against Steel Phalanx as well.
He's good at hunting Myrmidons. He's real good at hunting Myrmidons.
Give him like +1 damage BS stack or something.
Just give him a multi-rifle.
Or a Mark 12.
Yeah, Mark 12.
Go the other way.
Just give him a huge gun. And a DA close combat weapon. If you had a DA close combat weapon and maybe just like a multi-rifle, I think he'd be fine. That's it. All right. Well,
close combat doesn't exist in Infinity. We don't use those.
We don't use
That's
what?
Correct. There's never been melee in Infinity.
It never once. We did it. We finished. We completed another exciting edition of the listener mailbag, which was very cool. So thanks. Keep those guys coming, or those questions coming. I really enjoy this segment and I want to keep doing it. So go add some more questions next week to the mailbag so we can answer your questions and tell you what's on our mind about Infinity. We had a little bit of, sorry.
There's stupid ones.
There's no stupid questions, just stupid podcasters that answer them badly. There's just us being stupid. So we have one more little thing to cover, and that's just like a little bit more reinforcement news, which I think is cool. And this was something that slipped by me, but I realized this week as they've talked a little bit about the fact that the new reinforcements for Hack Islam will be attached and from QK, which I think is really cool. That's a cool way to kind of update old, like we knew MRF was coming. Doing QK, I think, is super cool because they're another faction that we talked about where it's like you guys could use kind of a glow up. And I'm kind of unreasonably excited about that. I think it would be really cool if some of that stuff we talked about might come true, like Saladin, who's like a Navy guy, and QK being the naval deployed forces that protect the Silk Road. I think that kind of like inclusion or upgrade or whatever, I think would be super cool. So I don't know what we're going to see for those new units to get added to QK, but if that's the direction we're heading, where we're taking a look at some of the older sectorials and stuff and adding some new units to them, I'd be pumped for that.
If I had any pull at all, I would push for inspiring leadership Saladin in QK. I don't even think it's good, but I think it'd be different. There'd be something else to do in there, and it would make them different, and it would stand apart from the other two. Because the other two are already the do everything factions. So give them something weird. Make it like you can't do this elsewhere in Hakkasan. I know Caledonia.
Like a Caledonian style thing, but for Hakkasan, I think that'd be cool too. Make them like the very well trained version,
but only when he's here. You can make him like 50 points. Like do what you do with the other two.
Yeah, and give him a spacesuit, man. Give him heavy armor, like Sun Tzu him up. You know what I mean? Like give him a new stat line. I think that'd be awesome. I'd love to see Saladin like battle armor edition. Yeah, give him his battle armor. Well, I mean, that would be cool. Is if those profiles were like the space guys. You know what I mean? Like give them some space armor. Like give them some big, heavy, like Patcher style spacesuits.
Would he keep Repeater?
Sure, fuck it. Why not?
I mean, if he's heavy infantry, it doesn't matter, right?
It's literally just
he's already hackable anyway, so who cares? It's so weird that he has Repeater. It still weirds me out. I don't know why he has it. It's so dumb.
It's a robot.
All right. So then let's jump in and talk about our keynote topic tonight, which is talking about social contract and Infinity. And I'm going to lead this and kick it off, but I'm going to hand it over to Owen afterwards, and he's going to tell an anecdote to talk about when social contract goes wrong, and then I'll bounce it over maybe to me or Dan to talk about when social contract goes right. And actually, maybe
I got plenty of stories when it goes wrong too.
Yeah, well, I don't want to believe
that too much. There's lots of stories.
Yeah, I know. So let's define.
Let me tell you about the time I broke all my models in spite of my opponent.
That's right. The wings thing. That is a terrible story. We're not telling on this podcast. So talking about social contract, what does that mean? Social contract is the agreement between two players to resolve the game, right? And to resolve it following the rules, and so that the outcome is equally recognized as valid by both players. That's what we're talking about social contract. And it becomes more important the more unknowns there are in a game, right? So the more the game relies on information that only one player knows. So like, for instance, think of like party games like Werewolf. The social contract in Werewolf is some people know they're werewolves and some people don't. If you haven't played Werewolf, it's basically one of those games where someone starts off infected. Everybody closes their eyes, things happen. And over time, you discover who's a bad guy or good guy, or the bad guys win and take everything over. Because there's hidden information in that game, you can just lie. You can just lie or cheat or not play by the rules and win. But then there is no longer a valid outcome. So everybody has to enter into the process of playing a game with a social contract that everyone's going to abide by the rules in order to complete it to a valid conclusion. That's what that means.
That's not the best example, though, because you're supposed to lie in Werewolf.
Sure enough. But if you lie about being a werewolf, you know what I mean? Like if someone accuses you of being a werewolf and you lie about it, then the outcome's no longer valid. So there's a whole element of Infinity where there are things for unknown, things like hidden deployment, things like open and closed information, line of sight. You have to be able to answer questions truthfully and honestly, and you have to be able to hold.
How many orders do you have left?
Sorry, how many orders do you have? Yeah, you have to be able to answer questions,
but it is for some reason,
and know what the game state is. And you and your opponent are collaborating to reach the conclusion of the game. And the more information you share with each other, usually the more valid the end of the game is, right? And the more both players share that conclusion. And my experience with Infinity is the social contract is very strong, because you can't actually mechanically operate the game a lot of the time without asking a lot of questions. You can't perform movements, right, without knowing what can see what. So you're forced to talk to your opponent in a way that a lot of games don't. And on the flip side of that, because arguably every game should have a social contract, there are games which do not have as clearly defined rules of like what is open and closed information, and they're very two-dimensional. So everything's kind of known from the game state. And the players walk into the game with an assumption that both sides have an equal amount of knowledge about the other person's forces or rules or the game state. And some games, let's take an example, a lot of Games Workshop games can have so much information that without communication and social contract, it's very possible to not know what the correct way to proceed with the game is or what the correct interpretation of the rules are. And even worse, some games change their rules so often that what was true yesterday isn't true today. And so that social contract and communication becomes even more important. So now I'm going to kick it over to Owen, and you're going to tell a story about social contract in gaming. So let's not use any names, not dox anybody on this, but you can explain the circumstances and why this came up and why this was in our heads.
There was a kickoff event for Warhammer 40K's new edition. It's a funsies event because nobody knows anything. Like, everyone's under the impression that Eldar are completely overpowered. No one knows what armies are good, what units are good. The rules are a little iffy. Like, how does charging work now if I'm going over terrain and like into a building, and who has to get where and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that people don't know about how the game's going to play. All the armies have been redone. Going to this event, we're playing. We've made it to the third round. I won my first 2 rounds on the grounds that my opponents just didn't know how many guns the guard have these days. And I go to play another fella, and he has a stratagem that has 2 aspects to it. One
you're gonna have to say what a stratagem is. Remember, people don't play 40K.
Yeah, there's an ability that he can use periodically throughout the game. There's a resource cost to it, but effectively what it does is increase the defensive nature of his army, either by reducing your ability to shoot them at all, or just impeding your ability to hit them when you do shoot them. And my opponent had this ability and he used it, and I didn't know about it because obviously it's a new edition and we don't know what it is. And I had asked, like, okay, what is that ability? And he describes the first part of it, that if outside of a certain distance, that unit can't be targeted. And so I go, oh, well, then that's not going to be relevant very soon because we're obviously going to close the gap on each other. And he goes, yeah. And what on my side is, I have an ability where I can double the cost essentially of that ability that he has. And so I choose not to use it because it's not going to be relevant because it only reduces my ability to hit them at long range, and I'm coming right into them. The following turn, he uses that ability again, and he then explains that also it makes him all -1 to hit, reducing my accuracy of my units. And I go, oh, well, my guys don't hit very well already. This is an incredible power boost, and you could do it all the time. Like, but why didn't you say that? I would have doubled the cost last turn, so you couldn't do it, and you wouldn't be alive right now. Oh, well, like, I just thought you knew or something. Like, you got really squirrely about it. And we're unwilling to go back to let me have my ability in the past. And it tilted the outcome of the game. A squad that should have died didn't die, and in not dying, killed 2 of my squads because guardsmen are made out of paper. And like, it was a moment that, had I played it with the full understanding as I had asked him for, he wouldn't have been able to do it. He likely would have lost the unit. It's not guaranteed. It's always a dice game. But it soured the experience of that game, which was otherwise a fine, like, good time playing, because I had asked directly for the information, and part of it was withheld to my detriment and his advantage. And that's what totally threw me off. Like, it was like, I no longer care. Like,
so how does that impede social contract, right? Like, let's talk about that for a second, because you both went into this and you described the event itself as, we're all in this in our ignorance, right? We are having this experience together so that we can wrap our brains around this. This is not going to be a hyper competitive tactical game. We're learning right now.
There were no prizes for winning. There were just raffle tickets. Like, it was that kind of place. We're all just figuring this out. And so, in the spirit of playing for fun, wanting to know all of their rules, that's where the ask was. How can I play effectively? I don't know what you have. And then them not saying it feels very much like I'm going to hold this to my advantage. I'm going
It's a
to not
betrayal
say
of
it.
that social contract.
Like
Yeah.
the betrayal of it is we both came to the table knowing that we didn't know what the other guy had, and the assumption that you'd be honest and not like lies of like not lying, but like a lie of omission.
Yeah, but and volunteering, like everyone should be like in a situation where you were all attempting to learn, right? You would be volunteering and collaborating to get the best possible outcome of accuracy in a game, right? It's
Right.
why did you show up to this thing? Did you show up to win where there's no prizes for winning, or did you show up to play to the spirit of this event where we're trying to like learn together?
It's kind of much worse than 40K too, because there's zero hidden information.
Yeah, like, and the thing is like, if I didn't trust him, I could open my phone, go to his faction, look at his special abilities, and know exactly what they are. But the assumption being that your opponent will just disclose all of the information when asked. Like,
and that does almost make it worse, right? When everyone has access to the information freely, and I think that maybe gets held as some kind of defense too. Like, well, you could have looked on your phone, and it's like, well, but I trusted you. I asked you what it did. You gave me half the information, and then when I said it wasn't relevant, you agreed with me. When that, I think that
definitely was going to become relevant.
Well, I was going to say that's the key to me as to why that was a breach of a social contract. Is you said specifically, oh, okay, well that ability won't be relevant because I'll get closer. And he goes, it sure won't. ... And then makes a choice to not say the second half of what the ability does. And I mean, we are making some assumptions, so let's be careful here. Right? He might not have.
Owen likes to nod his head when he's, it won't be irrelevant, right?
But he might not have known what the rule did. We could make a case for his own ignorance, this player, and say he thought it only did the first thing, realized it did the second thing halfway through, and then was caught with his pants down and felt weird about it, and then didn't make a good choice afterwards, right? Like, I think I don't want to bet with someone else's money, right? Like, what would I do in that situation? I would probably just be like, oh, of course you can spend those CPs. Go for it, dude. Like, you're right. That's definitely what you should have done. And if I'd realized that and told you, then you definitely would have. So yeah, cool. Yeah. Okay. I can't use that for less than 2 CPs now. Like, great. And so if you make that decision, whether through ignorance or through, like, I guess maliciousness, then the consequence of that become what's your choice afterwards when you discover that it happened. And I would say the choice he made was probably not in the spirit of what was trying to be accomplished in that event. And
maybe I again, like, as frustrated as I am, in the spirit of the event was a new thing, I'm not going to be like I come off as really bitter and annoyed by it, and I am to some degree, because it's like, why? But at the same time, I would play him again. Like, of course, with this one instance of an exception, whether through ignorance or whatever, a mistake was made and it had long-reaching effects on the outcome of the game. But again, I could have just missed all my shots anyway.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's the reality of the dice. In no way did that decide 100%. Like, it was not a case of alive, not alive. Right.
It changed how you felt, though. I think that's what we're talking about. It changed about how you felt about the outcome, because you no longer felt like you had ownership of the outcome because of that breach of social contract.
I do have one other, and this one's Infinity Tide, because this is a conversation that me and one of the guys in the local community have been having almost every time that we play in the same room. And it's around hidden deployment in Infinity, and my unwillingness to ask for the picture of where a guy's model is if I'm suspicious. Because I'm not confident I have a good answer on how you resolve that. So you're playing Infinity. You've both deployed. They have secret deploy, that, or you suspect that they have secretly deployed models, and you move in some way that you feel is not expected. Like, why would I do this other than, like, this is not the efficient way to move models, and they reveal a guy who traps you in some way. Mechanically, you go, hey, I would like to see the picture or the mark of where it is that he's on the board, because it seems really unlikely the level of advantage that this just gave you, because you didn't have the knowledge of the things that I had that would come and do this. But I don't know, I have never done it, because the moment that you do and it's revealed that they're not actually there, you've kind of crippled the ability to play Infinity. And that's why I'm like, I'd rather fight it through than face that.
You'd rather be at a disadvantage than have to like
Just
now
immediately
just
end the
have the
game.
game feel null
Yeah,
and void because they
I've
cheated.
now crippled the ability for you and I to play this game. Like that's what I face.
Because you caught him lying. Yeah.
And they might not be, but I'm not willing to roll the dice on that, right? Like I'm not willing to go and say, yeah, can you show me the picture? Oh yeah, of course, here it is. And it's
Noted.
like
I can cheat against Owen.
you can definitely cheat it. It won't make you win, but you can still cheat.
Oh.
But yeah, that's something that is just Infinity related, and it's a personal thing that I've been like. And there's the other guy who has been in the situation where he did ask the person to show, and they lied, and it crippled their ability to play the game to the point where that other person who lied about it no longer plays in the community. So like,
Right.
this is a thing that like you're gonna ruin your ability to interact with people if you do it. I don't think you actually told the story that motivated this whole conversation.
Well, I was going to get to that afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to
Fair
get to that
enough.
afterwards, why this came up and why it was on our minds. And it's because it's like hot internet drama. I didn't want to spend most of the time talking about it, but we're just trying to define like what does it look like when it's followed, what does it look like when it's not. But we can talk about that. Yeah. The interesting thing is that this comes down to like when it goes super far awry, it becomes malicious. And I think that actually Infinity self-selects people like the one we're about to talk about out. I don't think they can exist in Infinity and actually play. Because I think that thing we talked about earlier where the player skill, you can't mechanically advantage yourself to the point where player skill is irrelevant, I think, in Infinity. But you can in more two-dimensional games, I think, like Warhammer 40,000. And that happened in an early tournament in the UK, where a mechanically advantageous list, which is no longer even a possibility of playing in Warhammer 40,000, had basically the ability to almost completely destroy
I think
an
you can
opposing
say
army.
weighted dice, and people are going to get it.
Going, it was dependent upon going first. And
Yeah.
So a player was caught with weighted dice to basically guarantee them having the first turn. And that was in the third turn after they gotten to go first every game. Someone suspected that they were rolling strangely different dice from their giant dice pool for the first turn all the time. And then did like a salt bath to prove that it was a weighted dice. And during this whole thing, the player in question decided to try and flush their dice down the toilet. And they wouldn't go because they were weighted with lead and they wouldn't actually go down the toilet. And so now these dice are enshrined at Element Games in the UK. You can go see them if you want. They're in a picture frame in a shadow box with a picture of them at the bottom of the Element Games toilets that somebody found when they went in there to take a piss after this guy fled the scene of his own crime. And that is like this is not to bag on Warhammer 40,000. This is not to bag on those players. But what it is the less relevant the less you need to communicate with your opponent in a game, the more two-dimensional and sort of mechanically driven it is, and that the player outcome isn't requiring you to ask each other's questions and having that close held hidden information. I think the more open to these types of situations it is, because that player could have, if they weren't called out, won all their games, through that mechanical advantage. And having never actually fairly performed the game, still come to a conclusion that I guess would never have felt satisfaction to anybody else. So
how many times would you have to watch somebody roll dice before you started to go into those are weighted dice?
I think all it needs to be is they've got 3 different colored dice and they always use those for very specific rolls, and you get suspicious.
I mean, you personally,
like me personally,
you're at an event. You're playing a guy. Now, this is the first time that you've played him. And he's like, yeah, I got my little dice collection here. Or most people like, I don't even usually like, I'm not even coherent enough to pay attention to what dice someone's rolling. And they just roll and they get lucky. And they get lucky.
Yeah.
And they get lucky. But like, I've played people in Infinity. Amon exists, that cheaty bitch with his weighted dice. Like
I like the guy who's left the community. You could
yeah, I can be mean to him after he dices me into the grave, because I'm obviously a better player and have only ever lost because of dice. He definitely never outplayed me.
Owen's mask is slipping off and you can see the lizard underneath. He's eating mice right now.
But yeah, like I can't actually imagine a situation where I'd be playing someone and the decision that I'd come to is that person had weighted dice. Like
It
don't
would
know.
need to be very specific, yeah. I mean, and slightly egregious. I don't. It
There'd
doesn't.
have to be
does-
something going on already. There'd have to be some person who I was already on edge with because they had done
Mm,
some kind of stuff in the past, and like
yeah, well,
in
that
doing
player, it's
so,
already slippery. The feeling that
right?
you have some type of collaboration with this person is already gone for some reason.
Like in the past, they showed up, and then it turns out they were like 20 points over or something. Like
Yeah. Little
something
tells.
else, or like they scooped a dice really fast. And they're like, oh, it was a 7 or a 4 or whatever.
We
And
could
you're
start
like,
talking about War Machine, but we don't need to.
yeah,
I'm sure we have 50 more stories, but what I want to get to now, because I don't want to bag on. I want to harp on talking about other game systems and players because that's not relevant to the situation. That's not what we're doing here. We're just talking about why collaborating to the conclusion of your game I think is so important. I want each of us to share 3 tips to reinforce the social contract. And if you've ever been to one of my events, I will every single time I start running an event, give a bunch of like advice to the players. I do like a big everybody come stand around here and we're gonna talk about what we're gonna do today. And they are all about social contract. And the first one is whenever you don't know something, before you spend any orders, if you don't know something, put your finger on the table and say, what can see this point? And everybody should feel free and safe and comfortable to be able to ask that question. What do I know about that can see this point? And that communication should be free and open, and it should always be accurate. Because if you ask that question, you get a response, then from then on, that person, if they make a mistake, they've abdicated that. There's no going back. They have to tell you that open information. The second thing is to always freely explain what things do when asked from your open information. If someone doesn't know what a skill does, right? And you should collaborate on that. If someone doesn't know what a combination of skills can result in, to freely and openly share that information. And the third one is call each other by name, shake hands, introduce yourself, and talk to each other by name, because it is far harder to go into a situation where you don't feel good or able to communicate if you actually know the person across from your name, and you've done some like basic like social interaction before the game starts. And those are my 3 things. They're very
it's worth
simple.
Also commenting that a lot of this is tied to playing people who you don't know well.
Yes, exactly. You're playing strangers.
Yeah, it is not the like your buddy Jim who you play every week for fun games on Tuesday nights.
Yeah,
this is the I'm going to an event and I have not interacted with these people.
Exactly.
That is a lot of this.
Yeah,
because if your buddy Jim is cheating,
this,
then what are you doing, man?
Well, because like you and I don't need a social contract. Like, and people used to. It's funny because I think we got really comfortable in the hundreds of Infinity games that we played on camera when people would be like, why are you showing each other your open information? It's like, well, because we both know what we have. We've played hundreds of games of Infinity against each other. We both know how this is going to go and what's in this army list. We're both like completely familiar with each other's armies. So yeah, and you're right. We probably shouldn't do that. We probably should hold that information back and play by the letter of the rules. But like you and I don't need a social contract because we already know each other. We've already played a million games against each other. And I think you're absolutely that's a great thing to point out, is that the fact that this is even more important when it's with strangers. And it's why those tournaments always start with that kind of a conversation, right? Because you're going to go into 3 to 5 games against people you probably don't know, unless you're you, me, and Dan, and we end up playing each other in every event that we ever playing together. Because that just seems to be that's the law of universal attraction, is the cream rises to the top. Or sinks to the bottom, depending upon.
Did you just call me creamy?
No, it's a fucking dude. Oh my god, Dan.
You're so weird.
I'm not weird. It's a Randy Savage line, you idiot. Look it up.
Dan can't read. Don't be mean.
You know Dan was homeschooled. You know he can't read. he's learning Infinity through Braille. He has a Braille app.
He learns through attrition. He's against other people, and he learns it that way.
It's like training a horse. You have to break him in. All right. So those are my 3. I know each of you has very specific. I think you come up with the hidden deployment one. Owen is actually a really interesting example, but each of you has really specific things that I've seen you guys do playing games with people that I think are good elements of that. Do you want to talk about them? Why don't you go first, Owen?
You've never seen me play games, have you?
Go ahead, Dan. You go first.
Wait, did you watch mini wargaming things online? Is that what you're talking about?
I didn't even know they existed until I showed up there. I had no idea they existed. I didn't know who you were until Owen talked about you. He kept saying Dan. Dan and I chugged chocolate milk on camera, and I'm like, who?
Did we? I can't remember this.
There was
I
some
mean, it sounds
video
like
that he
something I would
always
do.
referred
That was
to
an
where you
intro
guys-
to a game because
Yeah,
by
and the two
by
just
the end of
jump
our
chuck.
careers there,
We played so many
were
times.
really off the rails.
Yeah, where you guys didn't care anymore. That's the intro. Is just 60 seconds of you chugging chocolate milk together.
Good times. Um,
It got really meta. It was like an art piece. It was like an installation at the end.
I was also naked.
The camera can only see the top half.
If that behind the camera, thanks.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the tip.
It's just
Okay, sorry. My tips that I'm going to share with you.
sure.
I would say, have the attitude that you are doing everything to try to help your opponent win, and you're not doing him any favors. But it's kind of like, if they're obviously mistaken about something and like talk about it out loud and be like, okay, because that guy can't do that, so you're like, actually, like, I can't do that, and if you do that, you're probably gonna die. And if you're not an idiot, you will realize that. And so how I like to put it is, I'm going to assume that you're not an idiot and that you're not just like brain dead, and that if you have a logical bone in your body, which you do, and you put two and two together, you will know this is a horrible decision. And so you would not do it. And it's kind of like, and it's not like you're like saying, oh no, that's a bad decision, you shouldn't do that. But if they're like humming and hawing and stuff or whatever, you're like, well, this person does this, or you just kind of just help them out with some information.
Yeah, or even doing like the you know what's a really good example of that, Dan, actually, because this is a really good thing you're pointing out, doing like the mod count for people, right, where they're like, I don't know, should I shoot this guy? And it's like, well, I think you've got a combi rifle, right? Yeah, I got a combi rifle. Okay, well, that looks like 24 inches probably. So remember, I've got mimetism, I'm suppressing, and I'm in cover. So I think we're over your BS at that point. You might not want to try that. You know what I mean? Like, just reminding them of the game state and collaborating through, not through decisions, but just like, what is the current state of play?
There's a hacker in this building, Dan. There's a hacker in this building, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm going to move next to this building. I'm going to carbonite you. How do I always get caught by this?
He's like Lucy with the football, just like every single
What's that
time.
model back there? He's a hacker. Okay, I'm going to move up. Fuck, I got caught again.
That happened in the last tournament.
I will solve this problem by pushing my face through it.
I wouldn't have wasted my time doing that. I don't know how else to tell you other than to just play your game for you.
Should I roll your dice at this point, Dan? What are we doing here?
I'll just sit down and twiddle my thumbs.
Yeah.
No, but like, and it's so important in whatever game you're playing, because it's the attitude is, it's like, okay, do I want to win against this person because they're bad at the game? Or do I want to win against this person because I'm good at the game? Right?
I think even worse than that, Dan, is sometimes if you don't collaborate with your opponent to resolve the turn, you end up in illegal game states. You have to walk back, and that screws both players.
But it's just little things where it's just kind of, I mean, you're playing in a tournament. If they're like overeager and fast about things, you're like, okay, and they're like rolling dice, and you're like, well, you've rolled the dice now, so there's only so much we can go back on. In fact, we can't go back on it because you rolled the dice. But if like dice have not been rolling. I told you I can't read or speak. It's just way better to give someone advice and help them out. And then if that in the end it makes you lose, then if someone who knew more about the game was playing, then you would have lost to them anyways. And it's you lost because of you, not because of them. Yeah, ultimately, even though you helped them win. I don't know how to explain it better.
I don't think it is helping them win. I think it's just being really clear about what's happening, right? Like, and to me, that's more important. I feel more satisfaction from a game when everything was in the open, everybody knew what choices they could make, and then everybody made informed choices. Because then the winner's very like, it feels very, what's the word? Not appropriate, but like it feels like the correct resolution of the game, and both sides enjoy the process, hopefully. You know what I mean? If it's done in a collaborative fashion as opposed to being adversarial. Like, it's weird to say that you're adversary and you are collaborating, but you are to resolve a game like Infinity, because you have to be able to talk to each other.
Yeah, I found that after playing Infinity and going back to other games, like I played some games of 40K, it was like I was so much more open about asking information from my opponent, where I never used to. Of like, wait, what weapons do these guys have? Do they have anything that has like above strength, whatever? or is there this? And it just kind of, and usually people are pretty open to answer, and it's like a very positive experience when you're kind of collaborating to play the game together instead of at each other's throats to play the game together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where the point isn't to gotcha somebody, right? The point isn't to like punish people for what they don't know or their ignorance.
Yeah, there was one moment in that 40K tournament where he like deploys all of his guys out in the open. And I was like, oh, okay. He's just hoping to go first. And then after we deploy, he's like, I get to redeploy 3 guys. And I'm like, oh, well, if I had known that, I probably could have deployed a little bit better. But what are you going to do? So it was a bit of a gotcha, but I mean, I don't think it would have changed that much in the end of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's strange how some games seem to rely on this idea of like a wombo or a combo or a gotcha of like stacked abilities or something like that to get to the result. Like that was a very War Machine-y thing, like go for the caster kill because I combo this and this, and then all of a sudden you're dead. It's like 1, 2, 3 dead and the game's over. And like how does one side feel versus that for the other person?
Mental gymnastics of a Gareth from Retribution assassination run are a nightmare. It's exactly what you're describing to the end. There might be more because I stopped playing after that point, but yeah.
What about you, Owen? What's your advice for reinforcing the social contract? What can you do as a player to make that collaboration have like a good result for the game? And what do you think it is for Infinity?
Get comfortable calling a judge. Everyone's always so upset. They're like, we don't need a judge. We can sort this out ourselves. And it's like, nah, man, just get a third party. Get another guy to walk over who doesn't have a stake in the game and can sit there and say like, hey, here's the problem we're at. What can we do? I think you guys should do this. Perfect. No, that's not how that works. Okay.
I will say that is I've had more judge like friendly TO judge interactions at Infinity tournaments than any other tournament I've run. And they're never ever adversarial. They're just usually like, we can't figure this out.
Or even if they are adversarial and like, I don't know if we have line of fire here or they have line of fire here, the judge will just be like, nah, you don't. Like,
sure. Or yes, you do. Yeah.
Or yes, you do. And you both have to just deal with the outcome that has been set up in that situation. And like, it solves it if you can't come to an understanding between the two of you. Just call a judge. Like, you're not being mean to your opponent by saying, I want a third party to make the decision here. Like,
yeah, we can't come to a resolution.
You think that, I get that. Here, like, get the judge over. Or like an Infinity example would be, you go to like land a drop trooper and you mess up a bit where they haven't rolled the dice to see if they arrive there, and you reveal a model from camo to shoot them because you're just like, oh shoot, a model's landing, I'm gonna pop out and shoot you, and then he fails, so he's not there, so you can't declare the ARO with that model. Do you go back into camo or not? And it's like not obvious right off the bat whether you do or don't, and so like things like that you get a judge.
Yeah, how do you walk the game state back or whatever?
And they can walk you through that or help you. Or if nothing else, they can try and find a way that'll be fair for both players involved. Like, that'd be my first part. And the other one is like, and this is for me, and this is different than Dan's perspective. I don't like telling my opponent how to play their turn, but I do like telling my opponent everything I have. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not going to gotcha per se, but I'm going to put down 5 camo markers. So like, you don't know what they are. If it's the wrong one, you might die, but you know there's something there. And I'll tell you, like, yeah, it could be nothing, a mine, a dude with a shotgun, a sunduck bar. Like, it could be any of these 4 things. Yeah. Like, it could be one of them, and you could walk around that corner and you can get shot by this thing that'll kill you. And I'll also do things like someone will place a template and it'll be, what was your intent with that template? Like, just to be precise, because I may or may not be lining something up depending on what you do here. And then I won't necessarily say like what would be the thing to stop me, unless it was, hey, this camo marker can still see you. Do you want it there? Oh no, let me move it a little bit. Yeah, it's fine. No worries.
What do you think about, so you're talking about sharing, like being very open and explicit with sharing information. How do you feel about at the beginning of the game, they ask you what your faction is. How do you feel about that question? Like, have you ever played against this faction before? Because I've seen you do that, where you're like, hey, I'm playing assassins. And they're like, oh, cool, awesome, I'm playing nomads. Oh, and you go, okay. Have you ever played against assassins before? Like, do you need me to go over any of the stuff that my faction can do?
Because I'm going to do things that you might not be familiar with.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've seen you do that. And I think you do it reflexively because you play assassins and because they do some things that are very specific to them that other factions can't do.
And when I win, I want you to have played at your best, knowing exactly what you could have done and failed to do.
Yeah.
Like you had all of the tools and you chose to make different decisions. And that's
okay. Your mask's slipping off again. I get it. Yeah, I get it. I want to defeat you so utterly that you had all that. Just stop.
No, I don't want to win a game where my opponent lost, not because I did something good, but because they screwed up.
Okay.
Like
you sound like Vegeta there for a second. That's all I want to say.
Like I want my opponent, if they're gonna do something that is like on the face of it, on like I'm playing Ariadne. I'm playing a faction that has access to Margot. And I don't tell my opponent to face the board edge. Is such a betrayal, in my opinion. Like, haha, I got you with the supermodel that is completely off the rails. That you
Margot.
No, Margot and Margot Duroc specifically. Like Van Zant's pretty bad, but Van Zant's just a dude at the end of the day.
He's another Margot.
Margot and Duroc are going to come in and could just kill everything. Like they have the tools and the stats to do that job. And if you play against somebody and you're like, yeah, I'm playing Cosmoflot. Have you ever played against Cosmoflot? No, I haven't. Oh, cool. Good luck. Like,
yeah.
And they lay out their little link team and they're like watching you, and then he's got his HMG and his TR bots over on the building up there, and it's like, okay, cool. My first order. Margot walks in from the back with Duroc. Yeah. I spec fire a grenade. I kill 2 guys in the link. Like, oh, I'm just dead now.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm saying is that you will get so there's benefits to that though too, right? By going over those like features things in the beginning and making sure they understand like certain rules interactions that are maybe uncommon that you can do and that your faction has access to. You're not telling them your army list, you're not telling them what you have, but you're making sure that their future communication is better too though. Right? That when you ask them a question, they are not on edge or feel like they don't know something, and you get a better game out of it. I don't think it's just did they have all the tools to beat you, and if you win you feel more satisfaction from it and you don't feel like you betrayed their trust. Like it's also like you will have a better overall experience of the game when everybody knows the possibilities, right, and the implications of those possibilities.
There's been a lot of events where I don't bring a courtesy list. I only bring my actual list and just show them that. Like, yeah, cool. Here's my lieutenant. If you get him, it's because I didn't defend him.
Like, I forgot to print this other one, so here's just everything.
He didn't forget. He's way too lazy.
Or the only time I usually print them is if there's like a joke involved. Like, it's like the all dogs go to heaven, and I'm like, here's my list, and it's just like 15. Like, there's just nothing there.
There's nothing there except for 3 dog faces.
There's 3 dog faces and the colonel sitting in a room.
And 3 antipode controllers.
and then here's my wall of 40 mil tokens.
Yeah, it's Veronin, 3 antipode controllers, and 3 dog faces, and that's the whole list.
That list is a nightmare to play against.
You never played his 10 Coom Rider list, man. It can get deeper and darker, trust me.
Not in this edition.
No, it can be a lot. I think that's I wanted to point that out there because I've seen you do that at the beginning of the game, and I think that's a really powerful tool where you do like, hey, have you played against this faction before? And like, it doesn't need to be every time. Like, they might just be like, oh yeah, I play Assassin's Creed. It's like, okay, cool. And then you just move on, right? Like, but offering that up at the beginning, it's like almost like an olive branch to like a good game, I find.
It has a thing that has added to my like repertoire for that is, do you know what a sunduck butt is? I've started saying that in events and in games that I play because they are so oppressive in some instances. They can like you can't even result in NPs. Like they've just ruined your game.
Yeah, you can have a real negative play experience if you don't know what one does. It's kind of honestly, it's kind of like but there's always been models that you ask questions like that about. Like, do you know what a Fide does? Do you know what a Speculator Killer can do? Do you know what
I'm saying? He was added to the list because there were others on that list like Fides and Margos and things like that who are like these standout pieces with an interesting combination of skills that makes them like outside the norm of I'm going to walk around the corner and shoot you.
you're anti-gotchaing though. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's actually like you are removing the possibility of a gotcha, which I think is a very like that creates a better overall play experience because
So
it's not really a gotcha. It's just it's a thing your army has as a feature that can happen.
again, and it's like I have a weird way of putting it, but that for me is very much helping your opponent win, or helping your opponent have the opportunity to win, or yeah. So okay, so here's an example. I was playing an Age of Sigmar, a little tournament. It was like back when like the second edition first came out, and I had a big old 3D printed dinosaur for my Seraphon, and it was just like a Dreadsaurian, and it looked amazing, and I was super proud of it. So I wanted to bring it on the table. So I'm playing this game, and it's kind of going my way, and he's obviously going to lose. And at the end of the game, he like takes, because it's like I was clearly new to the new rules, and he like grabs all the special objectives things that you can do. He's like, okay, well, you'd actually, the only possible thing is for you to do this. And so yeah, if you ran over here and then okay, yeah, so you get this many points. And it's like if I was left to my own devices, I would have not gotten as many points. And it was like such a positive play experience because it was, he assumed I wasn't an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had that feeling of if I had done the research or if I had played more, I obviously would have made that choice because it was an obvious one. It was, you get points by doing this, not by doing this. And so he helped me make that decision. And his goal was to win, but the bigger goal was to make sure that we were both playing the same game.
Right. Yeah, that you
Right.
both and he made the assumption that you would do the optimal choice in order to resolve the situation.
Right.
That makes sense
So-
why when we play games, you always say, like, assume I'm not an idiot. And I'm like, why?
I'm
I
an
never knew what you meant
evidence-based.
by that.
I'm a
You've literally said it to me a bunch
quantifiables
of
person,
times.
Dan.
And
I need
until
you to
you've explained
quantify
it right
this.
now, I actually did not comprehend what the fuck you were talking about.
Oh, really?
I have never understood what you've meant when you've said, like, assume I'm not an idiot. And I always just wrote that off as like, ah, that's funny. Like,
That's just the
I
thing
never
Dan
actually,
says. That's
like,
just the thing Dan
yeah,
says.
I never internalized it as like, oh, he's saying like, allow him to take this because it would have been the right play.
Yeah.
Whereas my brain is just looking at it like, play better. Like, what, you need
I love
handouts,
that
Dan?
I love
Get
that in
good.
every possible conceivable way, the three of us approach everything from such a different mental place. It's so incredible. I don't know how the three of us be more different.
I don't think you realize that how often that this has come up between Dan and
Oh,
like,
I'm sure it has.
maybe into the dozens to hundreds of times.
Yeah.
He has said that to me, and I have never comprehended it until he's described it right now.
The best part is you just nodded your head like you did and let him think that you understood.
No, I just laughed. I just laughed it off. I'm like, yeah, don't be an idiot.
Good old Dan saying stuff.
I just like, I bullied my way into getting my way. So it was like, it all worked out always. So it was effective, but it's funny that you never clued in. It makes sense because I was like, you're not quite. I got the result
really
that I wanted.
Glazing over when I say it.
But
when you fought for it and we're like, look, like let me take this back because obviously this isn't the play that I would have done had I known that. And I'm like, yeah, all right, sure. But whenever you would say like, assume I'm not an idiot, that just got written off in my brain. Like I'm not going to make that assumption.
I guess that's Dan's catchphrase.
I don't think I'm that charitable.
Oh my god! Wow. Oh, this has been so revealing. I'm so excited about this episode. So I think the last thing I would add is Infinity is a game where mental fortitude, mental endurance is really important. And that means like the ability to have bad things happen and come up with a plan to eventually get to your positive resolution, right? I would say that a positive social contract and what you just said, Dan, about that positive play experience, that is the thing that prevents tilt. That is the thing that prevents negative play experiences where you feel bad about the outcome because you don't know why what happened, or you feel like the game is against you and the rules are against you and you don't feel like you have any, I think, like franchise in like the choices you're making. And the better you are at communicating with your opponent to resolve the game in a way that is truthful, I think the better the game is. And you guys, I'm not going to say the line from Invictus this time around because we all know the saying about rugby and soccer.
Does
But
that have something to do with being creamy again?
it's not. No,
Just might.
I'm not going to Matt Damon it. I'm not going to do it this time because Owen will just say that I say it every single time. But it is very true that I think Infinity can't exist without a positive social contract because it is far less two-dimensional than some games, right? You can silently play chess against each other without ever speaking. Two people that don't even play the same language can sit across from each other and play a game of chess. It is the most two-dimensional game ever. I think other games are like that too, where you can, because everything's on the open and on the outside, everyone's supposed to know everything. You could just resolve the game with gestures and never have to talk. You cannot play a game of Infinity without talking to each other, and I think it's very important that you do.
And I think there are a lot of people that it might be one of the flaws of Infinity is that there's not enough people that do a there's too many people like War Machine where you can play gotchas, and if that becomes the norm, then people just stop playing. And I think a lot more people would play Infinity if they realized that there was this implied social contract and most people play with it. Because people like Owen, when he's like selling Infinity to me, he's like, you could do this and you can do this crazy thing and you can just pop people out of nowhere and blow up a whole fire team. And you can have like a guy that's a smiley face that just sit there and look at them. They can't do anything about it because they can't roll well enough because it's stupid. And it's like, oh, and the game doesn't rely on it. And you can be good with or without those things. And they're not gotchas. And I'm like, I don't understand how that works. I can't comprehend how that works.
You have to experience it. You literally have to experience it by playing it.
If Owen is selling it and he's enjoying the game after saying all that, there must be something to it. And so I took the trust, and then Ash gave me free models, and then I was like, okay, I'll play.
and here we are. Here we are, 31 episodes later.
And I get it now. Like I totally get what he was saying of like there's all these gimmicks in Infinity, but they're not gimmicks as you would think in other games, which is so cool. I
remember that conversation because it was in my backyard. It was the three of us sitting around my fire pit in my backyard trying to sell you on Infinity. And I vividly remember that conversation.
Well, he's told me like 20 times, and I just chose to ignore him. Kind of like
fair enough.
He was ignoring me. So I mean,
I just assumed he was an idiot.
he kept saying, "Treat me like I'm not an idiot," and then my brain just turned off when he said that.
I'm not an idiot. I don't even know what that means.
And then all I heard after that was just meow 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 mew.
Oh, the idiot is saying something again.
I better switch back on.
What do you want to take back?
Why are you dunking on?
Take your take back.
Everyone today. This is incredible.
Take your take back. Is that what you want, Dan? Just want your take back? Sure, idiot.
Oh man, and that's why Infinity
play board games together
is great. Don't play board games. Don't play board games. They're for serial killers. Yes, and so I would agree with you though, Dan. I think that it is a self-selection thing in Infinity where because you can't do that weighted dice trick in Infinity. It won't work. It just literally won't work. Like you cannot win a game.
So many people that are like, you should try Infinity, and they're like, no, because of this, and you're like, that just doesn't exist in the game. It seems like it would,
yeah,
but it doesn't.
It literally doesn't. It's a perception thing. People have to get over that perceived perception, and like literally, like weighted dice won't work at Infinity because what would you weight them to? Your target number is always changing, and if you make it roll a 1, every other possible dice roll is going to beat what you want to roll.
I would rate it to a 17.
I'd like a 12.
You can wait to 17 for armor rolls. If you waited for armor rolls,
that's it. You just wait for armor.
You are waiting for armor rolls, yeah.
Yeah, I have one dice that's a normal dice, and the other dice is always a pass.
He's thought about this.
I have thought about this, okay?
Of course,
this is why, like, when I talked about like what would I be watching for if I was watching for a dice roll, it's a skew to armor. It's not a skew to killing. It's a skew to you surviving my attacks.
Okay.
Like if you're really the guy who's worried about everyone around you cheating, I would say, as someone who has thought about it,
oh god,
that watch for the armor save.
Watch for the dice. It's always a 17.
That's the
dice to watch
that's
for.
The one because like 20 is too obvious. 20 is too obvious. You won't do 20, so you're gonna do like 17. because then
Oh,
you'll
you
still
have
fail
such you have such conspircy theory energy right now.
Dude,
This is
you
incredible.
don't even need 17. You need like a 14 or a 15.
No. Snipers will kill you. So you need 17.
Oh my god.
I told you I thought about this.
See, I like
I
a
know,
12.
of course you
because
have.
there's a
No,
lot
of course,
BS12.
of course, of the three of us, this is 100%.
Look,
You're-
BS12.
You're
You're hitting
Rorschach.
plus
You know
one,
that?
minus
Like
three.
in this group, you are definitely Rorschach.
You're just not seeing it, man.
You're Rorschach. I'm
The thing is like
Dan
I
is
tag
Dan
team
is
this with.
whatever.
I'm
Night
gonna.
Owl.
I also opened this conversation
I
where
know
like
the loser.
I wouldn't know how I would interact with that person, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Because like I can talk about this and I can suspect it, and I can talk about how like you could lie about your hidden deployment for advantage, and you could lie about what that guy actually was, or you can play proxy games and like these are the way, or like you can lie about order counts. Like these are things that you can do in Infinity that are very easy because the game isn't like really heavily monitored in a way that you would need to do it to make it that these couldn't be done. But the price is like you have to assume your opponent is not trying to pull one over on you beyond just the mechanical game that exists already. Because if they're doing something outside of it, there's unfortunately not a lot that you can do to catch it. And like you're gonna put that in your own head. Like it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, take the L and then eventually beat them by just skewing. That's the trick.
But it's playing better.
Yeah, he keeps using these infiltrated models, and he always reveals them. Well, then I brought a sensor bot, and I clicked sensor here, and then I put something really valuable there, and then when he revealed it, I went, got ya.
He hidden deployed something at a place I already censored.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been there. Nope, he goes to your deployment zone. Sorry.
That's a funny thing. Imagine you like left counters places you'd censored every time you censored. That's a level of paranoia I've never seen in Infinity before.
Well, this is a you don't solve that in a game. This is a like I've been playing games with this person, or this person shows up at the events that I play at, and I have a suspicion. So when I'm going to play against this person, I'm going to take this to an extreme that isn't really like I'm going to look strange for making the decisions that I'm making and like doing the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, you're now the weirdo.
Yeah, and it's fine. And then if nothing happens, then nothing happens, and we play a game, and it's fun. And if something does happen, I am justified.
So I'm gonna speak to the people who are listening that may have cheated in the past.
Speaking to himself.
Because I used to be that player a bit. There were some times where it was just like I really wanted something to go through, and whether it was likely or unlikely, it didn't really matter. And it was just either my opponent wasn't fully paying attention, and it was just a little tiny nudge or a little tiny pick up the dice quicker than in kind of being catch. Basically, you cheat to get an outcome that wasn't the dice outcome that was actually there.
Wow.
And I forget who said it, but there was a psychologist who was talking with people, and he said, I don't know of anyone who's ever gotten away with anything ever. And you're like, whoa, people steal things and get away with it all the time. But then you kind of think about it and you're like, well, if you sacrifice your integrity, you suffer. And I haven't done that in a long time. Like it's been many years. But it's kind of when I made that decision to like never do that again, it was one of those kind of, it's not worth my integrity to cheat at a miniature war game. Right? It's not worth
the balance of feeling good
character.
about the temporary win doesn't outweigh the feeling shitty about what you did.
I saved that for my taxes.
don't put that on the internet, man. Jesus Christ, Owen. We're gonna get on so many lists.
Yeah, gonna.
Sorry.
So if
I'm gonna get on all the lists you're on. I don't want to be on your lists.
So basically, if you suspect someone is cheating against you, they're only hurting themselves. Like they're not gaining anything out of it. And if you're tempted to cheat, and it's funny because to this day I am still tempted to cheat all the time.
I'm willing to say I don't think anyone is not tempted, and the degree is just how loud that voice is.
Right?
It's a good point. It's that wishing it was different. And
Even
does that draw take you to it?
Even cheating that isn't like blatant, like like stealing a quarter-inch movement, right? Like we're like, you know what you're doing. You may not like really be conscious of like, oh, I just need to get there. But it might be like I put the measuring stick down and I'm like moving a little bit with it. And I'm not really coherent that I'm doing that until my opponent's like, whoa, that was a lot of 6 inches. Like, yeah, like little things like that, I think are always bubbling under the surface. And you just have to rise above.
And luckily, it's not
win because
super
you're better,
common.
don't because you cheated.
But there's definitely a type of person, and they usually get exiled from their gaming group pretty quickly, but they just kind of make it a habit, and then they delude themselves into thinking that they're justified in doing it, and it's just they're not even consciously cheating. They're just, I mean, they are, but like it's just routine, and they feel justified in it, and those are the dangerous ones. But they usually get kicked out of the community pretty quick, whatever game it is.
Yeah,
that's really just self-selection
in the community.
Yeah, self-selection in the community. Yeah,
but there's the subtle things, and they're just when you're tempted, just don't do it. It's worth losing way more than sacrificing any kind of integrity you got. And that's just my thoughts.
Also, slow down is always a good advice too. If things are going bad, just slow down. Never in a hurry. There's lots of time. Don't steal those inches. Don't get caught
resolve
up
it
in,
right.
Like roll the dice and let it sit. Don't just be like, okay, I gotta go here and I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that. And it's like, whoa. Slow down. You might not be cheating, but you're starting to make mistakes.
Yeah, let me see what you're doing while you're doing it. We can't collaborate if I don't know what's going on.
Hey, buddy, I really like that you're rolling those dice behind that giant building, so I can't see the outcome, and you pick them up before we're done. I can see actually though, because I'm 6'4" and I can see over the terrain. And that was
the towering skill.
That was definitely not a 5, and I'm gonna get the judge to sit at our table for the rest of the game now.
Look at what you've done.
The city screams.
This is why we can't have nice things.
No.
My model's base to base with this objective. Okay, my turn. Judge, that guy's model's not base to base. Are you serious? Smash. Now I'm base to base.
Oh, the wings. That's right. Yeah, you broke the wings off your own model so that it would sit flush.
Yeah, because the declaration wasn't good enough, and the current state of the game meant that it technically wasn't. And the judge is like, my hands are tied. And I'm like, that's fine. And I just broke it and moved him. And I'm like, yeah, it was the whole time. Sorry that the miniatures design prevented me from doing that.
I just broke my miniatures because we're playing a game where miniatures don't matter anymore. We're just playing with pogs.
Correct.
And yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. That is, be good to each other, be excellent, and talk out the solution, and you will get more games in with more people and be more satisfied by the result. What a winding road that was. And who knows what we're going to come talk about next week. Dan had a bunch of ideas, which we will discuss and figure out which one we're going to do, because I think it's be cool for Owen. Actually was the one that instigated this through a conversation we had today. I think it'd be cool to have Dan come up with one for next week.
I initiate all of the what are we going to do episodes.
Sure you do. And we've got some things coming up to talk about. We've got Summer Siege coming up on the 20th of August. If you haven't got your ticket money in for that, you want to secure your spot, we are currently, I'm just pulling it up on OTM, 18 paid, 9 subscribed, cap of 40. So anybody in the next month and a half that's looking to go in, make sure you secure your seat so we can get our table locks done. We'll probably lock first week of August, just so we can know what our table count's going to look like and get everything rocking and rolling. Go get some more questions in the mailbag. Go if you want to get this early, if you want to have this 5 days early, you can go onto our Patreon. It also gives you a discount at the events. And yeah, and that's it. I have some other things we got coming up, but we can't talk about yet, so we'll talk about them in the future. That's it.
What, we have things coming up?
There's things that I can't talk about.
No, we have half-baked ideas that we haven't. I'm not going to announce. That's all.
Are you lying to our Patreons?
Just making this up now.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.